Hello, thank you for joining us on this episode of MSX's videocast. My name is Jayesh Jagasia. I am going to be your host today. I'm a global solutions leader with MSX. I work in the distribution and sales performance area, helping our clients improve their sales performance and customer experience at retail. Now, the automotive industry continues to transform at pace. On the one hand, we have Chinese brands who are emboldened by their success in their domestic market going full steam, or should I now say full charge ahead with huge aspirations and ambitions. On the other, traditional automotive OEMs with all their engineering and manufacturing might are determined to protect their turf with a new wave of products and advanced technology. Meanwhile, the boundaries between OEM suppliers and tech companies, all of these traditional definitions, they're blurring faster than ever before, creating a very dynamic landscape which is full of both opportunity and complexity. The last few years especially have seen the emergence of automotive and mobility brands that are challenging the status quo. They're not burdened by legacy, and they're free to experiment. So they are experimenting with new ways of working across the board, from product development, design to manufacturing, distribution, and the customer experience across the customer lifecycle. One of such brands, what we call a challenger brand that has made an early impact, is Polestar. So I'm very happy to be having this discussion with Polestar today. Now, there's much to learn from Polestar's journey, and I'm delighted today to welcome Nicquelle Denney from Polestar North America to this episode of our webcast. So, Nicquelle, we'll welcome you shortly. Nicquelle and I are going to be talking about Polestar's approach to lead generation and lead conversion, and what makes it so unique in the automotive industry in North America. Nicquelle, welcome. Thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm very excited for this talk.
Wonderful. Nicquelle, why don't we start with your sort of background and professional history and your journey with Polestar?
So I joined the automotive industry. That was the first job I ever had, was in automotive retail. I started at a Chevrolet store, kind of running their internet department back in the very early days of internet departments. So it wasn't well understood at the time. It was an awesome challenge and an opportunity for me to really learn how customers wanted to interact through the web and find our inventory there. I went on to work for 4 other manufacturers, all in retail, and kind of did everything from selling cars on the floor to running a service to sales operation for a bit. I worked in accounting even, so kind of had a very holistic experience on the retail side. And then I went on to work for Shift Digital. So I was with them for 3 years, and my client was Subaru at the time. So still in retail, but more from a consulting perspective, really promoting best practices on both sales and service lead process. And then that led me here to Polestar. So I've been with the team for a little over 3 years at this point. And I currently lead our digital operations team. So what we've set out to do is create a data-driven structured approach to the customer journey that really seamlessly connects every customer interaction back into Polestar's digital tools. And I know we're going to talk a lot today about what that actually looks like. It's a fairly unique experience for an automotive OEM with franchise retailers in the way that we service them. So we really focus on process development, providing actionable insights, field training, and even a little bit of retail support where we actually can work the customer alongside of our space partners. So we really want to make sure that every interaction is effortless. It's a modern experience, it's measurable, and really it's optimized for success.
Well, there's so much richness in your background and experience, Nicquelle, and I'm very excited to learn from you and hear your perspectives on how brands operating in the automotive industry today, in this very challenging environment with so many unknowns and so much uncertainty, what are the things they can do to really succeed. Now, one of the biggest pillars of success in our industry, and it has been for a very, very long time, is volume, right? How many units we can actually sell, and if we kind of trace it back to where it all originates, it's in lead generation. So I'm very curious to know, for a modern challenger brand like Polestar, how do you approach the whole topic, the whole paradigm of lead generation? What sort of sources you rely on, and how does this look different from a typical sort of traditional, conventional scale manufacturer?
I think one of the most unique things that has set us apart from, again, these traditional legacy OEMs that have franchise retail partners is that most of our engagement comes directly through our tier one site, polestar.com. So, really, since launch, that has been our primary website. And we have two lead sources. There are more forms on the website, of course, but the two primary lead sources are either our storefronts, where people can find inventory, interact in a traditional digital retail environment, or book a test drive. We also are hosting brand events throughout the year. So that's a great driver of brand awareness. People have an opportunity to experience the car. We get a lot of leads directly through there. And we are in the beginning stages of launching retail websites, so tier 3 dealer sites. So we do expect that the distribution of our volume will change over time, and we're going to be watching that very closely.
Now, in North America, Polestar, as a company and as a brand, has been through a journey when it comes to your distribution strategy and the models you've followed, right? And even in terms of what is visible to everyday people like you and me, is a very different approach. So you're the ones who went away very intentionally from these large format dealer spaces to something that is a lot more nimble, and in terms of its location, a lot more non-traditional. So tell us about how that sort of journey has played out, and where you guys are, and what some of the future path is looking like.
For a typical customer, their journey is really going to begin online. One of the most surprising things that I found after joining Polestar that directly contrasts all my experience in retail and my time with Shift was how many customers really place an order as their first interaction with our brand. So that signals to me that they feel confident enough through the research. They have enough information online that they feel that they can place that order, and they trust us enough to take that very kind of last step in the journey traditionally. That insight led us to actually benchmark that. So we have a unique KPI, which is our instant order rate. And that can reach as high as 20% in some months. So much of the experience really is digital, but customers do still appreciate having that brick and mortar, having a space to go talk to a consultant, learn a little bit more about the product. They, of course, will facilitate their test drive there. So from a purchase process perspective, it is still very much a hybrid where we have digital and in-store touch points, but it leans more digital than anything.
So it's very different from, and I know with the rise of digital, most customer journeys start online, but back in the day, the big source of visibility for a brand used to be these huge facilities and a yard full of cars, which would signal a healthy brand which is thriving in the market, and that would pull customers through. The world looks very different, and especially for a brand like yours, your first entry point for somebody interested in considering the brand is actually online, and they typically start at your website again, which for a number of other brands with their online journey is quite different, where they rely on a third-party website to generate a number of leads. So I've picked up some of those elements which are quite different and quite unique to you. One of the things you spoke about when it comes to sources of leads is also leads that you would generate offline via events and activities, or those that would, for instance, walk into a Polestar space. What I wanted to ask you was, how do you facilitate an experience for these customers that is very, very seamless between their online and offline experience? What sort of enables this whole omni-channel reality that they want to be able to start their purchase journey here and then switch to something else and then come back here without breaking the flow of the journey? So what are some elements in your paradigm that sort of enable and facilitate this seamlessness?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's something that as consumers, we can all relate to. Probably one of the most common experiences is when you schedule a doctor's appointment and you have to fill out all of your information on a digital form, and varying levels of aggression of them wanting you to fill out very personal information. Then you get to the doctor's office and you have to do it all over again on paper. And so we wanted to absolutely prevent that at all costs. If you are starting your journey online, the dealer should know exactly what you did and be able to pick up right where you left off. And the way that we facilitate that is really through a central digital ecosystem. So
Mm,
one of the things that sets us apart is we build a lot of our tools in-house. So our digital retail tool is Retail Portal or Commerce, and that's a Polestar developed product. Test Drive Portal is basically a booking tool, and it is fantastic because we have such a high rate of conversion. So if a customer books a test drive online, it's very, very likely that they're going to show up, and it's very likely that they're going to continue down the path, whether that's configuring a car or one of the other interactions that they can take. We have been working on a project in-house. So all of those leads come to our centralized CRM. Every one of our space partners is on a
mm,
centralized
mm,
CRM, which allows full visibility to the customer journey and full visibility to all the activity that the customer is taking throughout that
mm,
journey. So we're able to really not only empower our dealers to be able to see, okay, the customer submitted a configuration lead and a test drive lead, which means that they can have more intelligent conversations, but we can also empower them with automated communications. And a project that we've worked on for the last 2 years is what we're tagging as attribution. And it's a technical term that really kind of facilitates showing that journey. And this
mm,
problem has plagued automotive as long as I've been in the industry, where if you have one customer who's taking multiple paths of entry, they're submitting a lead online, they're attending an event, they're physically walking into the space, they're calling the space, it's very challenging to view that chronologically, let alone build any sort of automation off of it, because you have to rely on the system to interpret that
mm,
in a chronological way, which most major CRMs don't. They
mm,
typically are, ADF or XML leads that just kind of sit and someone can view through, but it puts a lot of responsibility on the end user to interpret this journey.
mm,
So we've solved that problem where we now have all of those various interactions coming in a chronological time frame,
mm,
and it's also enabling automation to be built. So I can say, oh, Jayesh, okay, you have started out a configuration, now you've test driven, now you've attended an event, and I can schedule an email that says I want to look at those fields and I want to talk to anyone who's done those 3 activities and say thank you so much for starting your journey at configuration and completing a test drive and attending this event. You're 90% of the way there. So it's I'm super super excited about it, and it's solving this problem that has really impacted anyone who's been in automotive retail and used a traditional CRM.
This is incredible, right? Because whenever I have looked at this landscape and this picture, it has always struck me that there are two major dimensions of complexity, or two major vectors, two major contributors of complexity. On the one hand, the the purchase process itself is quite complex. It is not, the simply, we lay it out very simply as a linear flow, but in reality it's not. Customers enter wherever they like. Sometimes they go back, sometimes they go back and forth before they progress. So it's not like a simplistic, linear pipeline, which may have been the view back in the day. It's very, very different now. And that complexity of customer purchase behavior is kind of one factor, and there are so many variations to it, right? And that is kind of, as I see, one factor that contributes to the complex. The other thing that I believe contributes a lot of complexity is the sheer number of digital tools that a dealer today has access to, and either voluntarily or otherwise has to use within their retail environment. Some of these tools don't necessarily talk to each other, so it's not a very harmonious ecosystem. It's often held together with sticky tape and band-aid. And I think what you're trying to do, and all the things that you've laid out for us are kind of addressing these two contributors, sources of complexity, where you're saying, look, we've looked at the customer journey. It is complicated, it is complex, and it goes back and forth. And we've responded to that with this harmonious, well-built, thought-through, custom-made architecture, and then the platforms and applications that sit within that architecture, which all speak to each other and can deliver not just a smooth experience for the customer, but also to the retailer in terms of managing and progressing those leads through the funnel to an eventual sale or an order. Now, obviously, pulling something like this off would have been a huge challenge, and I'm sure there's a lot more for you to overcome. So talk to us a little bit about what the challenges on this journey have been, A, and B, when it comes to managing and progressing leads in this environment, in this world, what sort of challenges do you face when you're dealing with leads and customers?
Yeah, absolutely. And I just want to add on to one of the points that you made of it's easy to talk about this and look at it as if it's this linear journey and that we want every customer to start at point A and progress to point Z seamlessly. And that isn't the case. So another very exciting feature that this attribution method will provide for us is being able to actually measure that, to say how many times are customers starting at the configuration point and how often do they go on to test drive? How often do they start conversely at test drive and go on to configure? Are there any differences in that experience for a customer? Is one better than the other? So there are many benefits to kind of having this centralized ecosystem, and namely, the most important for me is that it makes the life of our retailers easier. They can look at the information and say, okay, I know exactly who this customer is. I know exactly what I have to say, which in turn will make it a better customer experience that will just naturally lift. But there are all these benefits of being able to measure that journey, being able to support it through automated comms. So there's kind of ripple effects to having this kind of experience. And, that's a beautiful kind of utopia environment that we're describing here. And you're absolutely right. There's challenges. I'm not going to lie and say that it's perfect, but it's far better than anything that we've had historically. And I'm lucky to be sitting with you here 3 years into this journey and kind of with hindsight being 2020 saying, wow, we've come a very long way. We have made tremendous progress. And we're starting to hear that from our retailers as well. There were probably more pain points. There were more pain points early days. And now we're starting to get the feedback of, okay, we see it. We see this development work that you've done is enabling us to have richer conversations. So I would say that probably one of the most challenging is just working with development timelines, right? It takes time to get this stuff developed and functional, but we are far down that path and now we're just fine tuning. So I'm very excited for what the future holds and how we're going to better support the customer journey throughout. Something else from just a consumer perspective, some of the challenges are knowing really how best to engage with them. The world is changing very quickly. Consumer preferences are changing very quickly. I think historically, phone calls have always been one of the most, they've really dominated as one of the best ways to have high quality interactions with someone. You can build a lot of rapport. You can understand exactly what they need and cater to their specific pain points. And they definitely that still reigns supreme as one of the best ways to have a high quality interaction with someone. But text messaging is really emerging as a powerful tool for engagement because I don't know about you, I get a ton of spam calls. I even get a ton of spam texts, and they're getting very sophisticated nowadays. So it's kind of hard to assess, is this really someone I want to be talking to at the moment? And many people are not answering their phone on the first attempt. Text messaging, conversely, is a great way to get somebody to not only know that you're real and answer quickly, but feel confident to pick up the phone and have that conversation. So we're really trying to find the balance between too much and not enough. I think historically dealers have been in this just smile and dial and call them until, the customer tells you, please stop. And we don't want to provide that kind of experience. We want to be reaching out at the right point, which is also another benefit of having a centralized ecosystem is being able to tell, okay, Jayesh took 4 or 5 activities. And so he's probably someone that we want to be talking to. He's signaling to us that, yes, this is a good time to have a conversation. And that's, again, something historically that you are not able to see in a traditional setup. If your systems aren't well integrated with each other, you're just not going to have that visibility. So
Mm.
that's another benefit to having this centralized system.
I mean, as you were talking, and my intention was to start moving our conversation towards the process of converting leads to sales or orders through engagement. So I'm very happy that you kind of preempted that and segued into it. And then as you were talking about voice calls, telephone calls being the dominant medium, and then text messaging starting to gain momentum. Um, One of the things that struck me was the reason probably telephone calls were the dominant medium was because there was a high degree of trust in a telephone call. When you received a telephone call and you answered it, there was a high degree of trust that you're speaking to somebody who is real. With the sort of rapid growth of robocalling, especially in the US, I think a lot of that trust has started to get eroded. A lot of spam and phishing calls have eroded that trust. So as a consumer now, I'm very wary about picking up my phone because I don't know who I'm speaking to, and and the same thing applies to text messaging. Uh, and kind of what strikes me is if two important media of engaging with customers are losing trust, they have to be replaced with something else. And it'll be interesting to kind of do some discovery around what some of those media might be. Is it instant messaging? Is it social media DMs? What is it that takes the place of a high trust medium where a consumer is happy to engage with somebody on a conversation that might deliver some value to them? The other thing you said that really stood out for me was this um, um, premise of achieving the right balance between how much you communicate and how little you communicate. And in my mind, it has always been about every touch point aiming to deliver some value to the customer, right? So when we engage with our clients and their dealers, and we are coaching and training them on how to engage with leads, uh, a follow-up call is always attached with some value that you provide back. It's not a call to say, hey, we spoke 3 days back. You asked me to call up on Tuesday. So here I am. Have you decided when are you going to come in for a test drive? Should I send you an offer? It has to be framed differently as as an offer of value. Hey, we spoke on Saturday last week. I found something really interesting that I thought it will resonate with you. So here it is, and here's a link to something, this, that, and I found that usually helps to build that rapport and maintain the trust in the conversation, which is quite important in the progression of a lead towards the closure of the sale. Um, you spoke very briefly, Nicquelle, about the elements of your stack or your retail ecosystem. I would love it if you kind of unbundled it and spoke about each one in just a little more detail, explaining what it does and what role it plays and how it helps your retailers.
Something that you had just said there about providing value to the consumer. Anyone who has sat through a coaching session with me probably knows that my least favorite phrase is, and call me if you have questions, because it puts so much responsibility on the consumer to be like, okay, and I think most consumers are pretty highly educated. They do a lot of research. So they are already answering a lot of the questions that they have. So it's so exhausting to have a specialist kind of say the same exact thing to you and put that responsibility on you. We do an in-house mystery shop program because we have this centralized ecosystem, so we can see how all of the leads are being responded to, and varying levels of quality there. And one of the criteria that we measure for is that you are providing links back to the site or to continue the journey. So wherever the customer left off, if that was that they had configured a car, then there should definitely be a link for them to book their test drive, because that's a natural progression. So we want to keep them engaged in that. So to come back to your question, about kind of those different pieces to it, we have the traditional digital retail side, which is
Yeah.
really through our storefronts. And so you can configure a vehicle kind of to whatever your specifications, preferred specifications are. You can select from an available vehicle that's already on the ground. And both of those journeys will look very similar to a consumer. They can then
Yeah.
price it out
Yeah.
and play around with their purchasing options. You also have test drive. So you can book a test drive and manage your test drive, which again contributes to the very high show rate, because if they can't make it, they can always just adjust their time slot. And that all happens seamlessly through our systems. You can interact with us through an event, through a space visit. So actually visiting the store, of course, calling the store. And now what some of our retailers have stood up their tier 3 websites as well. So you could interact kind of in a traditional way through their dealer site and view whatever inventory they have available for sale today.
Amazing. Nicquelle, we are living in a day and age where no conversation is complete without a discussion about AI. And it is absolutely not out of place in our conversation, because I anticipate, if not already, definitely in the future, AI will play a huge role in the entire customer purchase process, both on the front end, which is what the customer experiences, but equally on the back end, which is the retailer managing their own operations and working with these applications. So I kind of want to get your perspective on what role do you see AI playing in this whole lead generation, lead engagement, lead conversion process, and what sort of experiments have you done already, or are you further down the track in terms of embracing AI and all the good things it brings to us?
Well, personally, I'm what you would call an early adopter. So when there's new tech, I'm generally one of the first people to jump on it. I am genuinely excited about AI's potential, and it is already streamlining the way that we work. So, I've had conversations with some of our entry level specialists who this may be their first or second job. They're not quite sure what the most attractive value added message would be to say to a consumer so they can chat with AI, and that helps them generate really high quality content so that they can have an intelligent conversation. It also helps to identify customer trends. In lead engagement, AI is going to really help us better identify in market shoppers, their behavior, and really allow us to be more efficient in how we focus our energy so that we can talk to the right people at the right time and increase our likelihood of converting. It also helps us with things like mystery shopping or pinpointing some gaps that the retailers may have. So super, super excited. But that said, I think many customers are intrigued by the novelty of AI powered interaction, but we don't want to replace human interaction. That is
Mm.
certainly not the goal here. We want to enhance our employees and our retail partners' ability to better engage with customers again at the right time.
Mm.
There's a lot of exciting stuff, even that you and I have chatted about being able to work on, where this can help from a training perspective,
Mm.
where maybe you have a new hire that you just onboarded, and I think anyone who started a new job understands how overwhelming those first couple of weeks and months can be, where you're like, I don't know where to look for certain information. Having just something that you can chat with and say, hey, how do I handle this situation, and it points you to all the resources, is super, super powerful.
I absolutely agree. I think one of the biggest step changes that I'm experiencing, and I'm encouraging my clients and my colleagues to also think about it this way, is this, the whole paradigm we had, that we have a library of documents and they're organized as folders, and you need to know where the right document is in which folder. And we used to spend a lot of time organizing those documents in folders so we could find them quickly when we needed them. From there, we moved to kind of dumping everything in one folder and having a very powerful search on top. So we wouldn't need to spend time organizing them anymore, because we'd be very confident in the ability of the search to pull up the right document when we needed it. And now we are kind of in generation 3, I would think, where we don't have to worry about how those documents are organized, which format they are in. and we don't have to then get a search result or a set of search results and pass through them to find what we are looking for. You almost have this super intelligent layer that sits on top, which you speak to, and that conversation, I think, helps you get what you need at the point of need, faster, quicker, cheaper than it has ever been before. So to me, this whole shift in the way we think about accessing content at the point of need, focused on exactly what I'm looking for by having a conversation with a thing which is powered by AI is a huge mental shift, and that's what I'm encouraging our clients and our colleagues to think about. I would also be remiss if we didn't mention some of the great work we have done with you. So thank you for the opportunity to work with Polestar North America and help you take over some of your leads and run them through our methodology and our system to convert them to a sale. So it has been exciting working on that project as well together. If you've had any experiences or learnings out of that project, very happy for you to share those as well with us.
Yeah, one of the most eye-opening pieces of that, and I wasn't surprised, so not eye-opening in that way, but it helped provide real context with our shoppers, which is always more valuable than pointing to some sort of recent study that was done. So having that project where we took a batch of consumers who had some sort of interaction with us but hadn't taken the next step, and re-engaging with them with a high quality, valuable message at the right time yielded really incredible results. We saw the conversion rate that we had far surpassed what you would normally expect from a marketing campaign. And that for us was just proof that when you engage with the customers at the right time with the right message, it is super effective. So it enabled us to go back to our retailers and kind of highlight the importance of timely re-engagement. So thank you. That was a very eye-opening and successful venture that we took together.
Thank you, and thank you for the opportunity again. It was a real privilege working with you all. We were speaking about AI, so I want to wrap this up on that note again. We spoke about the upsides, which we often tend to do. Do you see any downsides? Do you see any risks that organizations and professionals should be aware of and sort of be mindful of?
Outside of robots taking over the world? No, I think it, from my perspective, it's kind of obvious to me when someone has used AI. And even though I use it myself and it's totally normal and it has streamlined the way that I work, there is still this aversion, I guess, where it's almost like a gut reaction where you know that they didn't spend a lot of time and energy. They just threw this into ChatGPT and kind of got this output. So I think we have to be very careful about that and the way that we use it. So the ways we were talking about earlier, where it's a tool for you to make your life more efficient, you're more easily able to access resources that you need so that you can have a higher quality interaction. So I think we need to stay away from these very generic, cookie cutter responses, because that will likely turn people off more than it will help. But use it in the right ways to enable people to do their jobs more efficiently.
I think for me, I know exactly what you're talking about. And for me, when I thought about it, it comes down to authenticity. And especially in our industry where, it's a high value purchase. It's kind of a one-way door, at least for 3 or 4 years, 5 years, that, I mean, the stakes are quite high relatively, right? You want to be buying from somebody you trust. And in that equation, this authenticity and transparency is really important. And so, a sort of canned ChatGPT response is something that really damages authenticity. And I think that is something, especially in our world, which is still quite dependent on human equation and relationships and rapport and trust between humans for somebody to feel confident enough to make a decision in our favor. That authenticity is really important. That's something that I would sort of leave our listeners as sort of thing to take away from everything we've spoken. Nicquelle, thank you so much for joining us today. It has been an absolute pleasure talking to you, learning from your perspectives. And it's been great to have you. Thank you.
Thank you as well. It's been a pleasure.